Hi, my name is Chris Jablonski, and it is my great joy and privilege to serve you as your minister. This is Blessing for the Brokenhearted by Jan Richardson. Let us agree for now that we will not say that the breaking makes us stronger, or that it's better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps, for now, it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows that the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless. This is one of my favorite poems about grieving. Lots of folks have talked about this moment as one of grieving. Just so much loss on every level. We are grieving the loss of our normal lives, our usual patterns and pathways. We are grieving loved ones who have died and the wider losses of the human family. We are grieving for the struggle of our healthcare workers, still leaning into the storm, facing so many deaths, facing so much suffering. We are grieving graduations and weddings, vacations and adventures, plans turned to ash in our hands, the vast unknown of our shared future. As I mentioned before, whenever I've faced hard times like this, lots of different sizes and shapes and contours and details of hard times, but always I reach for this sweet and powerful book, When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. I read it one chapter at a time, often pausing and lingering on one part or one teaching. And this time around, this one glowing little bit of wisdom just stopped me in my tracks. She says, only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found. I think this is both beautiful and dangerous. It's beautiful to me because I can feel that it's true. Somehow when we face times like these, when we feel everything falling apart, when we are broken down to our most essential pieces, we do touch something deeper, something underneath the exterior show, something truer and more fundamental than the values and ideals into which we so often get swept up. But the dangerous thing is somehow woven with this word indestructible. I am so blessed to have our hardworking worship committee. We had a great conversation recently about resilience. And the danger when we talk about resilience is there can be a way that the conversation can sometimes blame the victims of trauma. Because there are some of us right now who are shattered by this trauma. We are experiencing this in so many ways. We are all over the map, and it's easy to talk about our responses in this time and say that some of us are more resilient, that some of us have found this indestructibility within us, and others have not, adding blame and the claim of failure on top of this trauma. But the beauty in this idea of finding the indestructible, to me, is that we remember in times like these that we are breakable and that somehow we survive. And to me, this is the miracle. Like the poem in the beginning, perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made precisely for this, as if it knows that the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still. This, to me, is the beautiful paradox. The indestructibility is precisely our destructibility. Like Legos and sandcastles, we are built up and broken down and built up again. We face impossible times like these and we make it through. Here are the words of Rumi, Bird Wings. Your grief for what you've lost lifts a mirror up to where you are bravely working. Expecting the worst, you look, and instead, here's the joyful face you've been wanting to see. Your hand opens and closes, opens and closes. If it were always a fist or always stretched open, you would be paralyzed. Your deepest presence is in every small contracting and expanding, the two beautifully balanced and coordinated as bird wings. Our true strength is sometimes in our capacity to be weak, our capacity to be in the truth and the fullness of our experience, fists when we are closed, stretched when we are open, broken and overwhelmed by these days when that's what is, creative and hopeful when that is what is true as well. This is our task always and especially now, to open to these lives, over and over, these experiences. One of the great gifts of my marriage is that we have this weekly check-in. It's a holdover from when we worked together, our first meeting of the week after we had had a weekend and a day off together. We came to call it the Hour of Power. It's an opportunity to do some scheduling, always important and sometimes complicated, to check in about the week ahead, to check in about each of our kids and what they need and how they are. But it always starts with this question: how are you? And of course, this is not just a check-in. It is and it's not, especially now, in these difficult times, in these stretched to the breaking times. It is an invitation to really think about how we each are and what we most deeply need. This past weekend, when I looked at it with her, when I really sank into it, I could feel how hard this was. And we talked about it. We talked about the unknown, about the coming summer, about each of the kids. And sweetly and not uncharacteristically, this often happens, we were each more worried about one of the kids than the other. And so we talked, and some of our anxieties were eased, we strategized, but the point is we slowed down. We thought deeply, we spoke truly. We were in the truth of that moment. When for me, sometimes every instinct is to barrel forward, to heap more armor on, to keep going, to hold on tight, especially now. It makes all the difference in the world to open, to slow down and ask, how am I? And to be true with the answer. Dear First Church, know that you are held. Know that I am here. Know that your entire community is here. Know that like the bird wings, this time will conjure in you all sorts of reactions and responses, opening and closing, rising and falling. And this is the indestructibility. that we are broken down and we are built up again, that somehow our hearts go on beating, that somehow there is still life and love. This is our path forward. This is our way through. So much love to you all. Amen.